canal. Yo me llamo Sirey. Soy una abogada afro-latina, licenciada practicando la ley criminal, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a empezar hablando de Bryan Kohberger. Ajá. Si quieres más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen. You guys, there are some cases that are so overwhelming, meaning like the amount of coverage, the amount of evidence, the amount of documents, the amount of motions, the amount of this, the amount of that is just so overwhelming that I don't want to be just another person talking to you guys about the same thing. And I also just don't want to be another person who's like reviewing absolutely everything there is about a specific case with you guys if I don't feel like you guys will find that fruitful, useful, interesting, enjoyable, whatever, if that makes sense, right? That said, it's come to my attention that a case that I did not cover on this channel, but I'm going to cover it for you now, just this specific portion of it. But a case where the defendant was convicted by plea has now filed a motion seeking post-conviction relief and to withdraw that plea. So without any further ado, this is the case of Bryan Kohberger.
Welcome to the News at Noon. I am Justin Corden. We start with breaking news. According to the New York Times, Bryan Kohberger, the man convicted of killing 4 University of Idaho students, is trying to take back his guilty plea. Kohberger has filed a petition seeking a trial, claiming he is innocent and that he was misled during plea negotiations, saying, quote, "My actual innocence is my truth, and the plea, hinged on by false promises and blatant disinformation, must be withdrawn," end quote. Kohberger admitted to the 2022 murders of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin just weeks before his trial was set to begin last year, avoiding a capital murder trial. He is serving 4 consecutive life sentences after, again, pleading guilty last year. KTVB working to learn more, and we're going to get reaction from the parties involved.
Okay, so I'm well aware of most of us who like true crime, have been following true crime and the like. We've probably already heard of this case, right? So I even heard about this case before I decided to share it with you. And again, I just felt like there was such overwhelming and vast amounts of evidence in this case that by the time that I wanted to start sharing it with you, it just became too much. So I decided, you know what, let me just not talk about it. Something new has arisen in this case. Like I said, he filed a post-conviction plea. Oops, espérate. He filed a post-conviction motion. Espérate. He filed a motion for post-conviction relief. Sorry, I'm all jumbled. He filed a motion for post-conviction relief. And I think that's interesting enough that I want to share with you guys. And I also want to talk to you guys about what exactly that means, okay? But because we didn't discuss this case, let's just go back just a little bit for the people who are unaware of exactly who this man is and what he did. So Bryan Kohberger was convicted by plea, like I mentioned earlier, of the killing of 4 University of Idaho students. Those students are Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen. Okay, you guys, so the plea that he entered into with the prosecution was this. He pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, and he agreed to do 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years without the possibility of parole, and also waiving all of his appeals rights.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonsalves, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
The great Idaho jurist Edward Lodge was known for trying to find something positive about every person he ever sentenced. And with over a half a century as a trial judge, that was a lot of people. This was often challenging, and I recall in one case he said that the best he could come up with was the defendant had good penmanship. Truth be told, I'm unable to come up with anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger because his grotesque acts of evil have buried and hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him. His actions have made him the worst of the worst. Even in pleading guilty, he is giving nothing hinting of remorse or redemption, nothing suggesting even a recognition or understanding, let alone regret for the pain that he has caused. And therefore, I will not attempt to speak about him further, other than to simply sentence him so that he is forever removed from civilized society. And accordingly, based upon his conduct and based upon the record before this court, recognizing the standards that govern this court's sentencing decisions as set forth in State v. Toohill, I hereby sentence Mr. Kohberger as follows. On count 1, burglary, 10 years fixed, 0 years indeterminate. I also impose a fine of $50,000. Count 2, first-degree murder of Madison Mogan. I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. On count 3, for first-degree murder of Kaylee Gonsalves, I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the victim of the family, or to the family of the victim, pardon me. On count 4, for the first-degree murder of Xana Kernodle, I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. On count 5, for the first-degree murder of Ethan Chapin, I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. The sentences on counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 shall run consecutively to one another. Restitution will be left open for 60 days. Defendant will be required to submit a DNA sample and a right thumb impression to the Department of Corrections and comply with the DNA Database Act. I remand the defendant to the custody of the Idaho State Board of Corrections for to be imprisoned in an appropriate facility in execution of the sentence where he will remain until he dies. Though you have waived your right to appeal, you do have a right to file a notice of appeal, and any such appeal must be filed within 42 days of the date of the written judgment, which will be entered shortly hereafter. Though the appeal, you should be aware, may be deemed a violation of the plea agreement, and so I certainly suggest you discuss that with counsel if that is your desire. I ask the media and public present to allow the families to be escorted out first before they leave. Again, thank you to everyone for your stories today. I am strengthened by them, and I am encouraged by your humanity and strength, and God bless you. We're adjourned.
And I understand back when this happened, the family was not particularly excited with this plea agreement. And I'm not in the family's position, so I'm not one to opine on that. I understand, but literally nothing that can ever be done will feel like justice to the family because their babies are gone. Right. So I'm not in the position to opine on that. From Bryan Kohberger's perspective, this plea agreement, although I don't know, it depends on how you look at it. Like, some people might see it harsh, but not really for what he did, and some people might see it as lenient for what he did, but long story short, this plea agreement gets the death penalty off the table for him, right? So he entered into it, voluntarily, and now he's asking to withdraw it. I got my hands on his post-conviction, uh, motion for relief or relief motion, and I wanna go through it with you guys. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. As you guys can see at the top, this was filed on July 27th of 2026. The resident name is Bryan C. Kohberger. His IDOC number, which is just his inmate number, is 163214. And then he lists the address of the prison that he is being housed at. It's the 4th District, Ada County. Bryan C. Kohberger is the petitioner, State of Idaho. Petition and affidavit for post-conviction relief. CV0126159094. Judge Hippler. He lists the place of detention in custody, Idaho Maximum Security Institution. The name and location of the court which imposed the judgment and sentence. He lists that. He lists his case number, which is CR 0124316665. Offense convicted, 4 counts of capital murder, felony burglary. Date of sentence imposition was July 23rd, 2025. Term of sentence, life without parole plus 10 years. State concisely all the grounds on which you base your application for post-conviction relief. Ineffective assistance of counsel during criminal proceedings, plea not knowingly or voluntarily entered because it was induced by unkept promises, plea not voluntarily entered because of threats asserted by petitioner's legal counsel. If your application is based upon failure of counsel to adequately represent you, state concisely and in detail what counsel failed to do in representing your interests. A. Failed to disclose or review exculpatory evidence, unknown hair in Chapin's hand during plea discussions, counsel's insistent that petitioner's plea need not be truthful despite petitioner's vehement denial of actual guilt, promises made by counsel regarding life without the possibility of parole status, immediate contact visits, freedom of movement, employment, and elaborate lies of death row life. State specifically the relief you seek, a withdrawal of a guilty plea. Affidavit of facts in support of post-conviction petition, he states the following. It is hereby declared that during attorney-client discussions, most of which included members of Bryan Kohberger's immediate family, petitioner was convinced to falsely confess to capital murders and felony burglary by coercion, disinformation, false promises, and the withholding of exculpatory discovery. The following is material to the inception of the plea. Counsel's failure to inform petitioner of exculpatory discovery received during plea discussions, namely clumps of unknown hair found in Ethan Chapin's hand, as well as failure of further inquiry. Petitioner was convinced that actual guilt is not an important factor in considering plea acceptance. Death row was imminent and advised to lie. Petitioner was to gain a legal victory in entering a false plea. A gross misrepresentation of and promises regarding what a life sentence would immediately afford petitioner, and a gross misrepresentation of death row in Idaho, including an elaborate, fabricated story of counsel's horrific experience touting an actual death row cell. All communicated to petitioner and his family by IDOC through counsel, thus constituting threats and promises to induce a plea agreement. He signs it, he dates it, and that's that. Let's just talk about some things because I know that you guys are really oriented to detail. So let's just talk about some really quick things, right? As I said, at the top of the petition, you can see the date of 7/27/26. As you see at the bottom of the petition, it's dated 7/22/26. What is the difference in the dates, or why is that the case? Literally just means that he actually filled out this form before it was filed, uploaded, and accepted by the court, right? So the date at the top, the 7/27/2026, is when it was filed and uploaded into the court system. The 7/22/26 is when he signed, dated it, and completed it. Let's start there. Second, you guys can see that his handwriting is all over it. So what does that mean, or what does that tell me as a licensed professional? It means he did it by himself. Okay? It means that he solely representing himself when filing this motion is what he did. Like, no counsel assisted with him in filing it. He did it himself. So that's another distinction that we should be mindful of just moving forward as we continue to discuss this case, okay? Another thing that I want us to be mindful of is this. And you guys, I told myself that before making this video, I was going to look up the name of this woman. Hopefully it comes to me. If not, you guys are going to see me look it up. But I remember we talked about withdrawals of pleas in the case of Monica Sementilli's lover's Robert Baker's ex-wife. I think her name was Devin something. She was like a porn star in Vegas. And I talked about her case here. And I told you guys that I felt like the prosecution was giving her a charitable gift of allowing her to withdraw the plea without doing all the important steps necessary. I say that to say, I have told you guys before in previous videos, or at least that video that we discussed, it's not an automatic. It is not an automatic. It's far from that. Okay. So, in order for you to be like, Judge, I want to withdraw this plea, unless all parties agree, you're not just going to be like, I want to withdraw the plea. So, plea withdrawn. Poof, I get a new chance at life. That's not how this works. Because in every single case that I have ever done, and every single case that I'm sure you have ever seen that ends in a plea agreement, there is a colloquy with the defendant. And part of the colloquy is to avoid, or part of the reason for the colloquy is to avoid situations just like this, right? And the colloquy includes language like, and do not quote me, but it's something like, do you understand your rights as they relate to entering into this plea agreement? Do you understand the plea agreement that you're entering into? Have you had an opportunity to talk to counsel about this plea agreement? Are you satisfied with counsel's representation of you? Do you have any questions for me about the plea agreement? Blah, 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 more. As to count one of murder, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? Something like that, right? And that's basically because we want to make sure that there's a clear record that the defendant did so knowingly, voluntarily, intelligently. You know, he's not being coerced. He's not being any of that. Those are the questions that are asked. So for Bryan to now be like, well, I was being coerced into entering into this plea by false promises or whatever, but not have said that at the time, I think is going to be a hurdle for him to overcome. I do think, citing ineffective assistance of counsel is a good legal basis by which the court might entertain, giving him an opportunity to explain why he should have his plea withdrawn. But again, that is not automatic. Basically, what would happen is they would go to some virtue of some sort of hearing by which, maybe the counsel that represented him is present and testifies as to the discrepancies between what Bryan said in this motion and what actually happened. And then the court makes a determination as to whether or not the court is going to allow him to withdraw his plea. Again, it's not automatic. If I had to guess and put this in percentages, I'm not going to do percentages, but if I had to guess, I would say the chances of him being able to withdraw at this plea are very, very slim. Are very, very slim. Let's just leave it there. Are very, very slim. Let's assume that I'm wrong. And for whatever reason, the court is feeling charitable and decides to allow him to withdraw this plea, which again, I don't think is the case. I don't think it is going to be the case. But let's assume I'm wrong and he's allowed to withdraw these pleas and he's allowed to go to trial or whatever. It's just going to be worse for him from my perspective, because now the death penalty is back on the table. And I think inevitably, if he were to be convicted of all of these charges, he's getting put down. You know what I'm saying? He's getting sentenced to death. So I don't think that's the smartest move on his part, but we'll just have to monitor this and see.
Talk about a stunning about face in the Idaho college murders case. Bryan Kohberger, who pleaded guilty to killing 4 students and is serving 4 life sentences, say he was tricked into confessing. He now wants to take back his plea and have his day in court. Last year, Kohberger admitted to killing University of Idaho students Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin at an off-campus house in 2022. On Monday, Kohberger filed a handwritten petition for post-conviction relief. He says his lawyers convinced him to confess to a crime he didn't commit. Kaylee Gonzalez's father just told our Jesse Weber exclusively he's not surprised by this filing.
Because he's an egomaniac psychopath. He's always wanted to control the room. He's always wanted to dominate the people around him. I mean, this guy's creative, and he's got a master's degree and he's working on a PhD. So he's not a moron, even though he writes like an idiot.
Joining me now to break this all down, I've got criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor David Gelman. David, you and I have been chatting about this all morning long. I'm just curious, in your experience, both prosecuting and defending, how often does somebody convicted and sentenced actually get a plea reopened?
I've never seen it happen, honestly, Marky. It's very difficult, damn near impossible to have happen. You know, judges, when they take a guilty plea, they make sure that the defendant knows exactly what they're doing. So they make sure that they're not under the influence of any drugs, alcohol, medication that could enforce it or that could affect their mind at all. They make sure that nobody's forcing them, coercing them, threatening them to take the actual plea. They do plea papers to make sure that they know exactly what they're doing. And then they have to do a plea colloquy. So they have to actually confess to what they actually did. They make sure to make the record is exactly how it should be, so they don't have to deal with something like this, where you have a defendant coming back a year later because they have buyer's remorse, is what you like to call it. So it pretty much never happens. I've never seen it personally.
Yeah, and we just heard Kaylee Gonzalez's dad say he's an egomaniac. You know, he's claiming this is all about ego. Do you agree with him? And if so, I'm guessing you weren't surprised by this filing yesterday.
1,000%. I totally agree with Kaylee's father on this one. Yeah, I mean, everything we're hearing about Bryan Kohberger, he is an egotistical psychopath, honestly. I mean, look, we know that he likes the spotlight. He wants to be in the actual entertainment, if you think about it. So, you know, he probably realizes, look, this is probably my last shot. I think he realizes he has no shot at actually getting this appealed and getting an actual trial here because he gave up his right to do so. But he knows that at least people will be talking about him again, like you and I are doing right now. And that is his goal. So I do believe that the father is, you know, spot on this one.
Yeah. And you don't think that he cares that this would re-expose him to the death penalty if this were to be actually taken up and reconsidered?
He's smart enough to realize that it's not going to be overturned. He's not going to be able to take back his guilty plea. The trial judge, who is a judge who did the sentencing, did the plea, is the first judge who is actually going to have to, you know, look at everything and make sure that there was no ineffective assistance of counsel. And I can guarantee you, the judge is going to find that there was absolutely no ineffective assistance of counsel. Then Bryan Kohberger could then appeal that to the Supreme Court of Idaho, but at the same time, they're going to find the exact same thing. So Kohberger is doing this for one thing and one thing only: attention.
Like I said, I didn't share all of this, you know, with you guys because it was so voluminous that I was like, you know what, I'm not just going to start in the middle of this, but something new has arisen and I wanted to make sure to share it with you guys. That is it for this video. But if you guys like this video, can you go ahead and tell me you like it? If you want me to continue covering this case, can you let me know? I feel intrigued. You know, I want to make sure that we cover at least what's happening post convictions and forward. If you guys want me to review some things that happened previously or specific, you know, documents, motions, whatever that happened previously, I'm happy to do that. Please just let me know which ones, okay? Because like I said, everything here was a lot going on. But all that to say, if you like this video, can you please tell me you like it? I'm offering memberships now. I'm not going to go through all of that, but I'm offering memberships now. If you're so inclined to become a member, you can always change your mind later. If you want to comment, let me know what you liked about this video. Let me know what you disliked about this video. If you would like to subscribe to my channel, kind of like memberships, you can always subscribe and watch a few videos. If I'm not your flavor or whatever, you can go. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.